Ever wondered how dynamic web pages are created? Today, we delve into the world of server-side programming using JSP and Servlets. In the digital age, it's essential to understand how the web operates, and server-side programming plays an integral role in this process. It's the powerhouse behind the scenes, responsible for creating dynamic interactive web pages that respond to users' actions in real time. Two key technologies used in server-side programming are JavaServer Pages or JSP and Servlets. These are both part of the Java EE platform and work in harmony to facilitate the development of dynamic, data-driven web pages. JSP allows developers to embed Java code directly into HTML pages, simplifying the creation of dynamic content. On the other hand, servlets are server-side components that handle requests and generate responses, often used for tasks like processing form data or interacting with databases. Now that we have set the stage, let's dive into the specifics, starting with servlets. Servlets, as intriguing as they sound, form the backbone of Java-based server-side programming. Picture a bustling city. Each building is a web application, and the people are the users. Now imagine a fleet of diligent postmen darting between buildings, delivering and collecting letters. These postmen are servlets, Java-based server-side components that handle requests and generate responses for web applications. As part of the Java EE or Enterprise Edition, servlets are the workhorses of tasks like processing form data, interacting with databases, and managing session information. They are the unsung heroes, quietly facilitating the interaction between a web application and its users. Much like a living organism, servlets follow a life cycle. They're born through the init method, do their work through the service method, and eventually retire via the destroy method. The service method in particular is the heart of the operation, responsible for processing client requests. And then there's the HttpServlet. Think of it as a specialist postman, an extension of the generic servlet class, handling specific types of letters, or in this case, HTTP requests like get and post. But how do these servlets communicate with the client's request and generate responses? That's where HttpServletRequest and HttpServletResponse objects come into play. HttpServletRequest is the messenger that brings the client's request to the servlet, and HttpServletResponse is the messenger that carries the response from the servlet back to the client. So what we see here is a complex yet efficient network of interactions, all managed by servlets. It's a dance of requests and responses, choreographed by the lifecycle methods and performed on the stage of the web application. Servlets, therefore, play a key role in managing the interaction between a web application and its users. They are the diligent postmen of the digital world, ensuring that your web application communicates effectively and efficiently with its users. Now, let's shift focus to JavaServer Pages, or JSP, another key player in creating dynamic web content. JSP is a technology that simplifies the process of developing dynamic web pages using Java. It allows developers to embed Java code directly into HTML pages, making it a breeze to create dynamic content. One of the key concepts in JSP is the use of scriptlets. These are snippets of Java code that can be embedded within HTML using special tags, namely % and %. This makes it possible to generate dynamic content right on the spot, as the Java code enclosed within these tags is executed every time the page is requested. Next on the list are implicit objects. These are objects provided by JSP to represent various aspects of the request-response cycle. Examples include the request object, which represents the client's request, the response object for the server's response, the session object for the user's session, and the out object for the output stream. These implicit objects simplify the process of interacting with the client's request and generating responses. Finally, we have directives. These are instructions to the JSP container and are enclosed within %at and %. For instance, the page directive can be used to specify page-level settings such as the content type, error page, and import statements. Directives give developers the power to control the processing of JSP pages. So with JSP, we have a technology that not only enables us to embed Java code into HTML to generate dynamic content, but also provides us with tools like scriptlets, implicit objects, and directives to simplify the process. JSP, hence, simplifies the task of embedding Java code in HTML pages to create dynamic web content. It's a powerful tool in the Java server-side programming ecosystem, and when combined with servlets, it can create highly interactive and dynamic web applications. Having understood servlets and JSP individually, it's time to look at how they work together. The beauty of server-side programming using JSP and servlets lies in their seamless integration. These two technologies complement each other perfectly, allowing developers to create dynamic interactive web applications efficiently. But how exactly do they work together? Let's break it down. Think of servlets as the brain behind the operation. They take on the heavy lifting of business logic, processing client requests, interacting with databases, and managing session information. Servlets are essentially Java programs that run on the server side, waiting to respond to client requests. In a typical setup, a servlet would receive a request, process it, and then generate a response. On the other hand, JSP or JavaServer Pages handle the presentation aspect. They are responsible for the look and feel of the web application. JSP allows embedding Java code directly into HTML, enabling the creation of dynamic web content. Essentially, JSP is used to design the user interface, while the servlets in the background deal with the application's logic. Now let's look at an example of how servlets and JSP can be integrated. Imagine a simple web application where users submit a form, and the server responds by displaying a personalized message. In this case, a servlet would handle the form submission, process the user's input, and then pass the data to a JSP. The JSP, in turn, would use this data to generate a personalized HTML page that is then sent back to the client's browser. In this scenario, an attribute, say username, would be set in the HttpServletRequest object by the servlet. This attribute can then be retrieved by the JSP using the request implicit object, and the username can be displayed within the HTML content using a scriptlet. This collaborative approach between servlets and JSP allows for a clear separation of concerns. Servlets focus on handling the business logic and managing requests, while JSP takes care of the presentation layer. This division of responsibilities results in web applications that are not only robust and scalable, but also easier to maintain and debug. So by integrating servlets and JSP, developers can leverage the strengths of both technologies, leading to more efficient and effective web application development. This collaboration between servlets and JSP allows for a clear separation of concerns, enhancing the functionality and maintainability of web applications. Finally, let's talk about how servlets and JavaServer Pages files are deployed and configured. Our journey begins with the packaging of our servlets and JSP files. These files are typically bundled inside a web archive or WAR file. This special file format, specifically designed for web applications, is a compressed version of all the components of our web application. This includes our servlets, JSPs, HTML files, images, metadata, and all the other resources that make up our web application. With our web application neatly packaged as a WAR file, the next step is deployment. This is where we introduce the servlet container or application server. These are environments where our servlets and JSPs can run. Examples of these containers include Apache Tomcat and Jetty. To deploy our application, we simply place our WAR file into the deployment directory of our chosen server. The server will then automatically unpack the WAR file and launch our application. But what about configuration? Well, that's where deployment descriptors come into play. Deployment descriptors are XML files that provide configuration information to the server and the application. For servlets and JSPs, this file is typically called web.docs.ml. It's here that we define settings such as servlet mappings and JSP configurations. These settings tell the server how to handle different types of requests. Let's take servlet mappings as an example. A servlet mapping essentially connects a URL pattern to a specific servlet. When a client sends a request matching the URL pattern, the server knows to forward that request to the corresponding servlet. On the flip side, JSP configurations might include settings like the error page, session tracking mode, or welcome file list. These configurations provide additional control over how our JSPs behave and respond to client requests. With these deployment and configuration steps, you're set to bring your dynamic web applications to life. This process of packaging, deploying, and configuring your applications is fundamental to server-side programming with servlets and JSPs. It's how we take our dynamic web applications from our local development environment and make them accessible to users around the world. Today we have taken a journey through the intricacies of server-side programming using JSP and servlets. We've delved into servlets, the Java-based components that process requests and generate responses, shining a spotlight on their lifecycle methods and their interaction with request and response objects. We've explored JSP, a technology that simplifies the process of developing dynamic web pages by allowing Java code to be embedded directly into HTML. We've seen how scriptlets, implicit objects, and directives can be leveraged to create dynamic content. We've also seen how servlets and JSP can be integrated, each playing to their strengths, and how this collaboration allows for a clear separation of concerns. Finally, we've looked at how to package, deploy, and configure these components using WAR files and deployment descriptors. With these tools in your developer's toolkit, you are ready to create dynamic and interactive web applications. Until next time, happy coding!